In Port Charles, the tide of secrets, duty, and emotional reckoning surged once again, pulling its most vulnerable players deeper into dangerous waters. As connections fray and alliances twist, the city braced for a week defined not by peace but by quiet revelations and mounting tensions. At the heart of it all were 5 separate storylines, each weaving into a complex tapestry of loss, loyalty, and painful decisions. At the Quartermain estate, Dante found himself grappling with questions he was no longer able to suppress. For weeks, he had sensed a shift in Brooklyn, an unspoken heaviness in her words whenever Gio's name came up. Now, standing by the garden where they once dreamed of simpler days, Dante confronted her with raw honesty. Brooklyn, clearly struggling, didn't deflect. Instead, she revealed layers of her growing worry for Gio, who had been increasingly withdrawn and defiant. Though Gio was still young, his behavior suggested he was hiding something far greater than teenage rebellion. Dante, torn between his instincts as a cop and his guilt as an absent father, listened closely. What began as a conversation about discipline evolved into an aching admission. Both Brook and Dante feared they had lost their son emotionally long before they could claim him as their own. What they didn't know is that Gio's recent actions were rooted in a secret that could change everything they thought they knew about their past and about each other. Meanwhile, across town, Alexis found herself in the midst of a desperate search. Elizabeth Webber had disappeared without a trace after leaving behind only a vague voicemail message about needing to make something right. Alarmed by the uncharacteristic vanishing act, Alexis tapped into every resource she had. She visited the hospital, questioned colleagues, even consulted police files that she still had access to through old favors. But the more she searched, the more ominous it became. Elizabeth hadn't just gone off the grid, she had planned it. And Alexis knew that kind of move only came from someone facing an unbearable truth. The clues led her to a roadside motel on the outskirts of Port Charles, where she found traces of Elizabeth's presence but no sign of her now. As the wind picked up, so did Alexis's worry. What could Elizabeth be hiding or escaping from? The answer, Alexis feared, could unravel more than just one woman's career. It might unravel a family. Back in the offices of deception, Martin Gray faced a blow that left him visibly shaken. After months of fighting for a lucrative merger, one that promised to revitalize his firm's financial future and restore his reputation in elite legal circles, the deal had collapsed. At first, it appeared to be a routine breakdown of negotiations. But Martin's contact slipped him a name. Someone within Port Charles had actively sabotaged the agreement. The name came with no details, no proof, just a whispered warning and a cold dose of reality. Whoever did it wanted Martin ruined, not just professionally, but personally. The timing couldn't be worse. Lucy, already furious about his secretive behavior, had begun distancing herself. Martin now stood at a crossroads. Would he try to rebuild what was lost, or go hunting for revenge? As these emotional fires smoldered, one man was quietly making deliveries that no one in polite society wanted to talk about. Marco, the elusive courier who had recently aligned himself with one of the city's most mysterious underground financiers, was on a mission. With a battered leather bag and a stoic face, he arrived at the docks under cover of dusk. The goods he carried weren't drugs or weapons, at least, not in the traditional sense. Instead, Marco's briefcase held sealed files, burner phones, and USB drives loaded with data capable of collapsing reputations. His job was simple: deliver to the right people, ask no questions. But that night, Marco hesitated. One of the files bore a name he recognized, someone he owed. Someone who had once saved his life. The decision to open the file or continue with his task clawed at his conscience. But Marco knew one thing: in Port Charles, loyalty could be more dangerous than betrayal. Finally, far from the moral crossroads and family breakdowns, Cody Bell was following orders. Not because he believed in the mission, but because someone had something on him, something that could bury him if it ever saw the light of day. The orders came through coded messages and one-way phone calls, instructions that Cody was not to question. This time, the task was different. He was instructed to insert himself back into a circle he had previously been ejected from, the Corinthos family. A familiar face, he had once been considered harmless, even loyal. Now, his re-entry was disguised as reconciliation, but the reality was darker. Cody had been tasked with observing, reporting, and if necessary, disrupting. The voice on the phone made it clear: if he didn't, the consequences would be swift. And so, Cody obeyed. But even as he smiled and made nice with those who had once been his allies, his every move was calculated. Inside, he was torn between doing what was ordered and finding a way to warn the very people he might be sent to destroy. The line between spy and savior was beginning to blur. In the shadows of Port Charles, these threads wove together silently. Brook and Dante's questions about their son. Alexis's escalating concern for a missing friend. Martin's descent into paranoia. Marco's dangerous deliveries. Cody's coerced infiltration. Each storyline moved independently, yet none could escape the gravitational pull of fate. The quiet corners of the city were not so quiet anymore. The foundation of trust between friends, lovers, families was beginning to crack. And beneath it all, a single truth echoed through every hallway and alleyway: nothing in Port Charles ever stayed buried for long.